Hey y'all, hey. It's Filter Free Friday, y'all. Listen, I'm so glad y'all here. When when I was working in learning and development, one of the first classes I got to attend was related to Myers-Briggs. And we went through, I think, a 3-day long class learning about communication, learning styles, decision making styles, and just generally how people like to situate themselves and organize their lives around them. Well, I also got a book that kind of laid out, like based on my type, what my strengths were, what percentage of the population people like me were, the basic habits of mind, typical qualities related to motivation, and areas where I might not recognize my own problems. And then it also even tells me my stress related behavior in this particular book. And I remember I was sitting in the session with one of my coworker friends, Kristen Ruckman-Stitz. Kristen, if you're watching, thank you so much for being in that class with me, because I had no awareness at all that the way that I was communicating with Kristen was overwhelming. That sometimes people who thought like her considered it to be rude, that it was intrusive, that it was not thoughtful. And I remember looking at her like, and she was like, "Yeah, sis, like that's what it is." And we got a good laugh out of it, whatever. So since that time, I've been completely just like inundated with like things like disc, um, all kinds of personality instruments. One of the ones that Lisa on our team loves is True Colors. I'm orange green. If you're not familiar with this is one of those ones you can do for free. My girlfriend Ebony, you all have heard me talk about Ebony because she is recovered from bladder cancer last year. Last year was a really tough year, and she introduced me to the Enneagram. I'm a 7 with an 8 wing. No matter how much Ebony says that am an 8, I'm a 7 with an 8 wing. And recently, Patrick Lencioni, if you haven't seen this book, I had an apprentice for a little while, Adriana Paez, and she had told me about this book, The Six Type of Working Geniuses. And it's not really about personality type as much as it's about what do you like to do, and what, no matter how much you do it, gives you energy. And the things for me are invention and discernment. It's like if I get to ideate and brainstorm, honey, you can't tell me nothing. But the working genius also points out that some of my working frustrations are wonder and tenacity. And it doesn't mean that those are bad things. It just means if I get stuck doing those things for a lengthy period of time, I'm going to get tired. In fact, if I got to do it for 15 minutes, I get tired. And so when I think about things like implementing rules and following strict process, yeah, it just ain't me. When I consider the people who sit around and wonder, why is there racism in the world, or why do people act the way they do? Yeah, that's not me either. It don't matter why. Not to me. It's like here we are. This is the reality that we live in, that we just got to figure out how to do something with it. And I know that sometimes when we're talking about racism and just general discrimination, people get frustrated when I bring up personality type. But sometimes, y'all, the things that we're fighting against are the types of differences that we cannot observe with our own eyes. And so I wrote this little book called Cultivating as a Culture as a Garden. And the reason I wrote this book is because I believe that even as it relates to doing work around anti-racism and inclusion, that and creating senses of belonging inside organizations, that there are kind of three ways that people go about it. Four, actually. The fourth is those people who just sit on the sideline and don't do anything. I don't know if you want to call that a type, but that's a large number of people. Those folks that are dangerously indifferent. I wrote a book about that too. But for the people who are willing to go into spaces where they're the only one, where people have not done much work, I call those folks the tillers. And if you've ever gardened and you've ever tried to grow something in a space where nothing has ever been gardened or grown there before, the ground is hard. There's rocks in there. You might have to put a lot of nutrients in the soil to get it ready. Like it's a lot of work if you've not grown something in a space before. And so tillers, when they're going into organizations, They have to have kind of thick skin because the learning is generally not two-way. It's one way, and we're kind of getting the people ready for the next generation or the next group of people who are going to come along behind us. And when I think about tillers, that's anybody who's ever been a first anywhere at any point at any time. And I'm not a tiller. I know sometimes people think I sound like a tiller because when I'm in social activism spaces, especially those that are on the outside, I know what I'm not for sure, and that's a weed puller. The vast majority of people who are doing the work are planters. These are people who somebody else has kind of paved the way, and now they're just going in afterwards, trying to build on what has already been done before. So I'm not the first, but somebody came and put together some framework and structure to help me kind of get us a little bit further along the way, get us down the road. And planting is difficult too. And what's difficult about planting is that tillers think you're moving too fast and weed pullers think you're moving too slow. So you're in the middle getting crushed on both sides. And I'll tell you, when I think about my Myers-Briggs, I kind of feel that way related to that too. Now, if you've ever gardened, you know that you cannot just till and plant. If all you do is till and plant, what's going to happen? I talk about this rocky patch of land that I have just out to the south of my house, and nothing should grow there. Nothing. In fact, sometimes in the summer, if I put potted plants on it, the potted plants get too hot for something to live there. But you want to know what will grow in those rocks sometimes? Weeds. And that's why tillers and planters need weed pullers, people who will push us further than we ever have been willing to go. They are the ones who keep saying, well, you ain't done this and you ain't done that. And we are not free until everybody's free. That's those people. And they are always bringing up the additional work that we have to do. And I'm telling you, we need weed pullers because weeds do not need sunny spots. They don't need nutrients. They don't need perfect watering conditions. Weeds will grow no matter what. And so when you look at the weeds of our world, without weed pullers, we end up getting choked into things that we experience, like banning of books, incredible amounts of wealth gaps, infant mortality, mass incarceration, subprime lending practices, redlining, you name it, desperate injustices in terms of education. And so I am grateful for a tiller, somebody who's willing to go in first and be that person. It's not me. I am also grateful for weed pullers, the people who are willing to stand outside of the gates and shake them to make us sometimes inside organizations do the work we're needing to do. I will tell you that many times, 100% of my client base is referral. And many times, the only time people are calling me is because some weed puller somewhere has blown up the spot. And I am telling you that it is the when I wrote The Holy Educated MFer, this was also a book about personalities and styles. You've got people that are so holy that they won't look at any kind of educational materials related to their faith at all. And they're so holy that anybody that uses too much grit, they're like, that's not of God. You've got educated folks who will think that holy people are just ignorant and they don't want to deal with it at all. And then educated people who say, I don't know, you MFers, you got to find a better way because that way is not effective. And then you got the MFers who don't like the holy people because they think they are holding hands and singing kumbaya and won't deal with the educated people because they think that they just, too tactful about it. And I think I all of this brought me to this point that every one of us has good things about us and bad things about us. Every one of us. And every one of us wants someone to lean into our strengths, elevate those strengths, and not focus on our weaknesses or help us to overcome our weaknesses. And what I keep running into that is just so frustrating to me, if I might be honest, is that when I meet people, they are willing to acknowledge that my ability to get on here every Friday and just talk at the off the cuff without notes, my ability to speak from the stage without fear. In fact, the more people, the better. I remember when I was on stage in front of 7,500 of my closest friends dancing with New Edition, baby, you can't tell me nothing. That's in my top 5 of life's experiences. But those same people then want me to be in the details, um, taking a gnat's ass worth of focus on what some sentence says somewhere. Let me tell you, if I'm not trying to change you to be like me, why are you trying to change me to be like you? You see, the design with which we were made. And there are people who are like, I don't believe in Myers-Briggs. I don't believe in Enneagrams. I don't believe in none of this. Especially the Myers-Briggs. They're like, um, Elizabeth, what's her name? Isabel Myers and Catherine Briggs, they happen to have some racist ideas. Well, they created the model back in the early 1900s. So of course they had some racist ideas. You show me one white person in the early 1900s that didn't have racist ideas. What are we talking about here? Nonetheless, when we think about that, no matter which of these instruments you use, they kind of break down into 16 different types. There was some design in how we're made. Yes, you're one in a million. But empathy is recognizing that when you are operating in your working frustration, when you have your places where you lack awareness, you want somebody to recognize your strengths and lean into your strengths and not be sending you emails with a whole bunch of threats and nonsense related to it. And so, you know, I've got to self-manage. And I think one of the reasons why God put this little book on my heart, and I swear to you, I feel like Jonah on the way to Tarshish. I don't want to go to Nineveh. I don't want to do this. If I'm just being honest, the easiest thing in the world for me to do is to not be empathetic, not to care nothing about what nobody thinks. It's the easiest thing. It is the easiest thing for me to just be like, bump what you talking about. I'm gonna do whatever I want to do. And this empathy journey has been the best for me to look at another person with the lens towards whatever they think, feel, and believe makes total sense to them. They want to wonder about why racism exists in the world. That makes total sense to them. And we need somebody doing that. We need somebody doing that. It ain't me, but that's what we need somebody doing. If they find joy in sending you screenshotting processes and sending the rules to you, listen, this is how God made them. I got to embrace it. And so when you look at our inability to be able to embrace the fact that somebody might be introverted and I'm extroverted or vice versa, if our inability to look at the fact that somebody might be conceptual in their thinking and theoretical and just inspired by folk, while another person is like, nah, what's your credentials, sis? And no, it's step 1 and then step 2 and then step 3. And how can you manage your life if you don't do it in that linear way? That there are people in the world who make decisions based on logic and reason, and then an entirely different group of people who go, no, what would I want to happen if I were me? It doesn't even matter if it's logical or reasonable. You need to lead with compassion. Those are different groups of people. I would prefer to not schedule any part of my life and get up and move things around however I want to do. That's not how the world works, though. I ain't gonna make no planes. My bus won't come on time. Think people won't get paid on time if I leave that way. So there's some schedules and some methodical methods for doing things that are necessary. And when you consider the way we fight about these kinds of things, I wonder if it's possible. If we cannot get it together about the things we can't see, is it possible for us to get to a point where I recognize that there are not 5 distinguishable groups classified by skin color and eye shape and hair texture? Can we? I don't know. I was watching Fox News this week about Women's History Month and the M&M's campaign. Listen, y'all, M&M's don't have a gender. They're cartoons. Why we? It's not important enough to mention on television And we're like, oh, there's gender non-binary M&Ms. It's candy, y'all. It's candy. And so I don't know. I fundamentally believe that Kansas City is the heart of the nation, can be the spark of empathy throughout the rest of the country. And I don't know where I got this ridiculous, big, hairy, audacious idea, but I believe it in my core of cores. And if nothing else but for today, can you just ask the question? And my friend Lisa is trying to push us to the platinum rule. What would I want? I got to treat people how they want to be treated. Listen, we ain't there yet. I want you to just sit in this idea. What would I want to happen if it were me? You don't want me sending you no nasty email? You don't want me blowing up your text messages while you work about something that, if you strip it all away and you put people in front of processes, is the right decision. You know, we are data rich and action poor. We got so many numbers. We got so much information. My friend David said to me this week, well, maybe if you give them some more information. People don't need more information. People need more ability to lean into, what was it like when you were busy? And what was it like when somebody sent you a nasty, threatening email? What did you want to happen? What did you want to happen? And you do that. You know, we start getting real performative out here. We get real performative out here, and everything you seeing in front of you ain't real. It's not real. And until we can lean in and go, how would I want to be treated? How would I want to be treated? How would I want to be treated? Even if, let me make it simple. You're an extrovert. You like to go talk to people. You talk and think and talk some more. You got everybody your friends. I got it. Don't you remember a time when you didn't want to be bothered? When you don't want nobody talking to you? When you wanted some silence and reflection time? In that moment, did you want somebody just coming over saying something to you? This ain't that hard. It's not that hard. It does require intention. It does require intention. My name is Nicole, and I'm going to go first. It's Filter Free Friday, y'all. We got work to do.